know why stand in line until you think you have the time to spend an evening with me.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora and from me. I am afraid I have to announce that we are in mourning yet again for Harry and Meghan's reputation, because I have received a report from one of the top accountants in this country, which makes a very ominous reading as to the realities, the significance, and the meaning of the Archewell Foundation, or charity, or whatever you want to call it today or tomorrow. And I am, without further ado, going to plunge right in with this before starting on the questions for today. The report is very ominous because it would appear that Harry and Meghan are using, some people would even stretch to say misusing, a charity for political ends and political objectives, as well as political rewards. But we'll get to that in a minute. But the really important thing, in my opinion, that has come out of all of this is how Harry and Meghan have duped not only the public, but the royal family as well, into thinking that Harry can't stick around here because of ill feeling between him, her, and the rest of the royal family, when in fact, wait for it, you're not going to believe this, Harry is only allowed to stay in Britain for a totality of 16 days in any calendar year at this point. You know, all the speculation about him having to beetle back because of somebody's birthday, or Meghan's uncle Mike died and Harry has to go back and console her because she's so distraught. Uncle Mike died, and you know, I haven't seen him for years and I didn't even bother to send flowers, and I certainly wasn't going to waste my money on a wreath. I mean, why should I do that? All he did for me was organize for me to have an internship at the Buenos Aires embassy, and the one that I've spun and said I was working there. I was a sort of mini diplomat. Yes, Aurora. Well, turns out he's only allowed to stay here for 16 days in any calendar year. And of course, he will have used up a lot of those days because of the Queen's death. Now, this is, if Harry's, well, I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to read out bits that I have picked out of this report because it's from one of Britain's top accountants, and he has been very kind in looking into the accounts. He's also a devoted monarchist, and he doesn't approve of what's going on. And I think you could actually say that he has turned his professional knowledge to good use. Yet again, Harry and Meghan get exposed. My goodness. Gosh, they better be careful they don't get arrested for overexposure. Well, the first thing that struck me, aside from the 16 days a year, which he's allowed to be in this country, failing which he falls foul of the British tax authorities. And they would, in his situation, be a lot more ominous than the American tax authorities in terms of, and we're speaking about earning power. That's what we're speaking about. Harry and Meghan, this whole Archewell thing is smoke and mirrors. It's really a massive cover for an operation that is basically politically motivated and financially incentivized. But the first striking anomaly, aside from the days that he has to be here, or can be here, I should say, is James Holt's remuneration. James Holt's remuneration works out, it is an hourly rate of $1,224.57. This is an annual equivalent of $2,387,925. Unless the other members of the Archewell group, which employs James Holt, were paid the same rate of remuneration, he has been compensated at a vastly higher rate by the charity, namely the Archewell Foundation, than the other commercial entities related to it. In fact, if his salary is, and I'm now going to paraphrase, I'm not going to read what he said, I'm going to paraphrase. If his remuneration is so much higher than anyone else's, that is an abuse of the charity laws, a total abuse. Now, if Americans want to write into the IRS to ask why, if this is the case, he's being allowed to get away with it, I would not discourage you from doing so. Because the fact of the matter is, the average annual remuneration of a director of the USA 501 subsection C 3 charity in the year ended 31st March 2023 was $86,851. So James Holt was paid at a rate of more than 27 times this average. Amazing, no? I mean, talk about a gravy train for their supporters. And obviously for themselves. Now, Harry and Meghan, of course, are not being paid anything for their 1 hour a week that has been declared. But the Delaware companies are basically a massive affront for tax dodging, tax avoidance, or maximizing, hopefully legally, but whatever, certainly not the sort of thing that supposed humanitarians and royals should be getting involved with. Now, he says it is worth bearing the following in mind. If Harry had stayed in the UK, he would have had to use a UK charity to obtain tax relief on his earnings, and that would not have been favourable for him. And the points are the bad press about the Royal Sussex Foundation, etc., Too much scrutiny from the likes of us. The Charity Commission's information publicly displayed is greater than that displayed for US charities. So they were avoiding scrutiny. You see, in Delaware, they can bury and obscure everything. In Britain, they couldn't have done it. Everything would have been transparent. So they have opted for opacity instead of transparency. I continue. He would not, big block capitals, have been able to use a US charity. No tax relief in the UK or US, since he would not be resident in the US. Delaware companies, businesses, check the box LLCs do not work well with UK taxpayers. Delaware is a US tax haven for US tax residents and for international corporations with some sort of base in an offshore tax haven, such as the BVI or Cayman Islands. It is not, big block capitals, a good place for a UK tax resident to set up because of the exchanges of information under the US-UK double tax treaty, in which the US has rather the upper hand. With Harry firmly in the US, both the foundation idea and incorporating various entities in Delaware makes sense, especially with a US tax resident spouse. Then he touched upon investment income from interest and dividends. $1,190 was received as investment income in 2021. This sum must have been interest, since there is no evidence whatsoever that any dividend-producing assets were owned by the Archewell Foundation in 2021. The Archewell Foundation states that it had $9,126,190 in its savings and temporary cash accounts at the 31st of December 2021. If the interest earned was paid at the rate of, say, 1%, then the funds were in the bank accounts of the Archewell Foundation for barely 5 days. That is credited on the 26th December 2021 also. He goes on to explain in greater detail, but I think that gives the point. Then he says, the conclusion, the Archewell Foundation resembles a tax-efficient mechanism for the Sussexes to support their friends in the media, who they categorize as small businesses, black and brown-skinned people who wish to assert themselves in the media. Practically every gift is to a black or a brown organization, with very few exceptions. And of course, this goes to the heart of the racist agenda which they have been pushing, which those of us who are anti-racist find so deplorable. And that includes anybody who loves this country or the Commonwealth. And that's important that this has been highlighted for that reason as well. One homeless charity in Dallas, Texas, a couple of charities helping Afghan women, one charity which employs US Army veterans to help people hit by natural disasters. So it's not exclusively black or brown, but it's mostly black or brown. The tax efficiency can come about. There is no direct evidence for this, but the conclusion is fair. When the donor, for example, one of the Sussexes, prefers to pay otherwise taxable earnings into a charity which that person controls, rather than hand over a sizable proportion, up to 47% in the UK, to the National Tax Office. You see, they donate their earnings to the charity and save tax on it. but I'll continue reading. It is clear that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were the chief controllers of the Archewell Foundation since they are declared, and he mentions where they were declared, to be both directors and influential trustees, in quotes. The others are grouped under the other heading as far as controlled is concerned, though James Holt's title is executive director. I think James Holt's title as executive director could actually be fetch and carry boy. Interesting, no? So we know at least 3 new things from this report. All this nonsense about why Harry has to keep on rushing back. And remember, they are the ones who have been spinning yarns about why Harry has to rush back. Never the truth that he can't be here for only 16 days. Has to be some fanciful yarn. Uncle Mike has died. Meghan's ill. Meghan's well. Meghan Mrs. H. H Mrs. M. Anyway, I've read it out. You know what the points are. So we will plunge in now with Sue W., who says, I wonder if Charles can relate to H because they both married someone who was mentally unstable. Sue W., that is an excellent point. Excellent. Very well made, very well asked. No one else has ever asked it. And it has to be said to me, it didn't occur to me either. Of course, you're absolutely right. Father and son have both married unstable women, and although Charles is now married to a stable woman, he knows the torment of being married to an unstable woman. He identifies with Harry. Isn't that interesting? It's eluded me. It's, to the best of my knowledge, eluded everybody, but it hasn't eluded Sue W. Well spotted, Sue W. OFH says, Lady C, would you agree that Meghan's humongous mistake was believing that she was the star and the British public was there to uplift, praise, admire, and celebrate her? Whenever she went out, she literally walked as though she was at the Oscars and had a red carpet rolled out in front of her like she was some global A-list star being admired. So true. That Joan Collins walk. Let me tell you something. I'm a hot number and I have such a hot time that the remnants remain with me, and that's why I have to walk as if I'm a duck. However, she failed to understand that her role was, in fact, to uplift, praise, admire, and celebrate us, the British public and Commonwealth nations. She didn't understand monarchy, taxpayer money, or public service. Would you agree with this? Incidentally, you look extra lovely today, with much love. I think you're referring to me the other day. Thank you very much. I don't think I was in mourning then, but I'm in mourning now again. Oh dear, we've grief-stricken on behalf of Harry and Meghan's reputations. I think what you have asked and what you have observed is absolutely spot on as well. Meghan really did think, I mean, I touch upon it in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story, but I have not highlighted it the way you have highlighted it. It's all been about what she could get, not what she could give. And yes, I think there is a strong element of, well, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. Roll those cameras and let the British people worship at my altar. It's so great being a goddess. It really is. God, did I have to hustle those buns to get here? But I've got her now, and I'm gonna enjoy it, and I'm gonna make sure that everybody just recognizes how great I am and that they all suck salt. Her attitude, her very demeanor, the expression on her face, so disdainful, so smug, so I'm the holder of secrets, and nobody knows about that secrets but me and H. And we're just so special, and I'm just so wonderful. And I mean, he's not really special, but I have to play along with pretending that he's special because at the moment he's the key that opens the lock to greatness. Meghan did not understand monarchy. Meghan can't relate to service. She can't relate to public service or private service. She can relate to seduction, and she can relate to manipulation, and she can relate to manoeuvring her way from A to C via your good offices as she pretends to be something she's not. But altruism is alien to people who appear to be as selfish as Meghan's behavior indicates to us that she is. So, and of course, Meghan isn't interested in taxpayer money unless it ends up in her pocket. She's interested in money that she can avoid the taxman getting his hands on. Hence why they're in Delaware. Archewell Foundation, such a wonderful charity. $13 million given anonymously to the charity. Is that out of the 150 or is it the $200 million that H&M have said that they've earned in the last year or two? Is that where they've parked some of the money? And then, of course, they have to make a show because they know it's going to be public of giving away some of it. So it's given away to places like activistic centres or political enterprises or PR companies that support their agenda. And let's remember, Harry has congratulated recently the Sussex squad. He's done it in the Centre-Barley accounts, in writing. The very Sussex squad, which has said the most dreadful things, and this being YouTube, I do not want to mention too many dramatic words, but, you know, termination of happiness and possibly drawing breath to Catherine, and curses to the children, and bots to try to destroy Meghan's sister and her father. And he's praised them. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, what can I say? You know, you couldn't make any of this up, could you? ABCDEF says, today it has been reported that the King hasn't even invited Prince Philip's cousin, Lady Pamela Hicks, to the coronation. She was one of the bridesmaids at the late Queen's wedding to Prince Philip in 1947. She attended the last two coronations and was looking forward to making this her third. What on earth is the King playing at? Well, may I say, my sentiments have been very clearly articulated already, which is, I think he should not have cut it down to 2,000 from 8,000. He should have at least increased it to 4,000. And you know, he is the king of this country. He is the law. The law is embodied in him. I make that point for what it's worth. So if they're trying to hide behind health and safety, I'm afraid it's like the emperor with his new clothes, awfully transparent. And having said that, I also have made the point, and I'm going to make it again, that I don't see the merit in excluding, well, I do see the merit actually, but I do not think it is a good idea to exclude the old order and supplant it totally with the new order, because all orders have a place in this country and should have a place in this country. Having said all of that, Lady Pamela's daughter has made it clear in an announcement that she understands that Britain is now a meritocracy, and so the aristocracy has to step aside. I think it's, quite frankly, ill-judged on the part of the King. That's my personal opinion. And if it displeases him or some people, so be it. That's my opinion. His objective is to let the young and the less privileged and the ordinary people of this country understand that he has them first and foremost in his mind. This is proving to be very effective. Or on the face of it, it's proving to be very effective. Or is it that this is what is effective? Because Charles is, the Mail did an extensive survey, and Charles is extremely popular. The monarchy is extremely popular. William and Catherine are extremely popular. Camilla is popular. Harry and Meghan not so popular. Surprise, surprise there. Is he doing something right? Or is he doing something wrong and his mistakes are being accommodated because they're not affecting most people? That's the question. I think only time will give us an accurate answer, because some of these things cannot, the outcome cannot, and the rationale can be determined, but the true reasons behind it, where the public are concerned, can't be determined so quickly. My own feeling is that he is deservedly popular because people understand that his heart is in the right place by and large, and that it matters greatly to him to be king to all the people of this country. And that's to the good. I just wish he wouldn't go along with this woke, trendy, class prejudiced thing of the old order should be shunted aside and given little recognition and as little respect as possible, when the fact of the matter is that the old order is as valid a part of this society and does as much good, if not more, than many of the new order. So I hope that answers the question, and because that's what he's playing at, in my view. And I think it's an error of judgment on his part. I mean, don't tell me he couldn't have found space for one old lady and her daughter in the Abbey. Give me a break. Of course he could have. But he believes in sacrificing those who he believes will support him no matter what, to curry favour with those whom he wants to support him. Interesting. One could say almost a cynical ploy. Richie Rich says, oh, and incidentally, I say that not maliciously, because I am not a great believer that people in positions of power, especially those who are rulers, and he's not a ruler, he's a reigner. He's not a ruler, he reigns, he doesn't rule. But I take the view that they don't have to be priests and they don't have to be goody two-shoes. And sometimes when they take hard decisions and sometimes when they display a bit of cynicism, it might actually be desirable if it is hard-nosed realism. But if it's just pandering to fashionable prejudices, I'm afraid I'm not in favour of it. Richie Rich says, I still don't understand how it was possible to have scaffolding in the Abbey to increase its capacity in 1953, but it's now considered not safe to have scaffolding in 2023. Isn't technology and knowledge in general more advanced than it was 70 years ago? So how is it that we can't do something today that was done successfully 70 years ago? Very good point. Another good point is the king is the law in this country. The crown versus Rex versus Rex the king, Regina the queen versus whatever. The crown is the law is the crown. Of course he could have done something if he wanted to. But maybe he's also currying favour with the local authorities. Or maybe he didn't want to create a fuss. Well, in life, you should know when to create a fuss, and I don't agree with his decision. That doesn't mean I don't support him, because I do. That doesn't mean I don't like him, because I do. That doesn't mean I don't admire him, because I do. But that certainly means I'm not bowing down at his altar and thinking that he's infallible. He's not. I don't even think the Pope is infallible, and I'm a Catholic. The infallibility nonsense is a 19th century concept. Popes weren't infallible before, and in my opinion, they're still not infallible. And certainly no king is infallible. But I think, Richie Rich, your point is a very good one. There has to be the ability to have expanded the seating in the Abbey. Has to be. Even if it meant taking out all of the existing seating and building a new seating. There has to be. And they certainly had enough time in which to do so. It was a choice. And in my opinion, it is the wrong choice. However, I'm sure on the day, everything's going to be beautiful. Everything's going to go splendidly. He and Camilla are going to be the focus of all attention, which they should be. It's a pity that they are going to be, if not the only sources of splendor, the splendor is going to be focused rather more on them than it would otherwise have been had there been a more representational list of all of the factors in this country which count. Let's put it that way. Michael Imadi says, good afternoon, Lady C. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for all your hard work that you put into these videos. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. It's nice to be appreciated. I enjoy them so much and have from the first. Thank you. Could you please explain what it would look like in a modern monarchy for the king to lose the support of the dukes and the aristocracy? How much say and interaction do they have with the monarchy? Could you also elaborate a bit more on the role the aristocracy plays in modern British life and why it is so important? You briefly touched on this earlier. Charity work, supporting communities, and managing estates. But I was hoping you might elaborate if there is time. Thank you again. I sincerely enjoy listening to you. Thank you for all of that. Well, okay, Aurora, you can't distract Mummy, honey. Yes, you want a kiss? Come get a quick kiss. You noticed I trained Aurora that we give kisses, but we don't touch lips. I don't actually like dogs kissing one's lips or face. I think it's dangerous, but pretend kisses. Well, if the aristocracy and the elite that used to be the aristocracy but might now have been added to the aristocracy, for instance, very rich landowners who are not aristocrats but are effectively they have the same lifestyle, the same everything. So you could say they are now aristocrats of a sort, without being aristocrats. They have a valuable part to play in national life because they own properties, they own estates, they are landlords, they help with the food chain, they actually play a part in practically every area of national life. Some of them own factories, and unlike the nouveau riche, they understand the concept of noblesse. So it's not all about me. It's about you as well. and it's about survival. It's about handing on to the future. It's about preserving and everybody getting their fair share. It is a far nobler approach to everyday life than the greedy, arrivist, I've made my money and now I'm going to make sure that you serve me attitude that is so prevalent amongst certain types of people. Well, up to now, the aristocracy has played a part in the British monarchy. The Spanish royal family distanced themselves from the Spanish aristocracy. And what has happened there is really rather interesting. And it could happen here too, where the aristocrats become like local royals, which in a way they are already sort of local substitutes for their local worthies. And if the monarchy becomes too remote, if there are too few royals to, on a daily basis, intermingle with the ordinary people without the press being involved, that is, doing public duties with schools, with local government, with local businesses, the way all of the working royals do, 98% of which is never reported upon. But the people know it. The people who experience it benefit from it. Just because it's not in the news doesn't mean it's not important. And this is something Charles and William and other people need to get fixed in their head. Just because we live in a world where everybody's clamoring for recognition, and when I say everybody, I mean everybody in the public eye and in the media, doesn't mean that what happens that's not reported isn't important. It's equally important. In fact, I would say it's more important. Because you might forget what you read yesterday, but you're not going to forget what you experienced. If you had a positive experience with somebody whom you admire. So I say that for what it's worth. In a funny sort of way, it will lower the prestige of the aristocracy on the one hand, while increasing their influence elsewhere on the other. It will also free the aristocracy, if they wish to be freed, from their social obligations. Because if the government is going to be responsible for everything, and the local populace, and that includes the aristocracy, is not responsible for anything except taking, and nobody's responsible for giving, that means that the aristocracy is going to be freed to be extremely indulgent, self-indulgent. They're going to be free to be Sybarites. Less duty, more pleasure. I'm not sure that's so desirable. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. Up to now, there has been a great degree of interaction between certain members of the aristocracy and the royal family. There are families that have links going back generations. And Aurora, what are you doing? sorry, Aurora is being very naughty. She's don't know why she's so unsettled today. But to continue, I think the aristocracy could end up, if their ties are loosened with the royal family's interactions, like rich people in America. I think that's what it will end up being. And also, like celebrities. So let's see what happens. I'm sure some members of the aristocracy would say, well, great, we don't have to do so much. But I think most will regret, because most enjoy their duties. Duty gives your life a higher purpose than pleasure. It's as simple as that. But if your hand is torn away from your duty, how bad is that for you? Well, it may not be good in all ways, but you're going to enjoy yourself a lot more, hopefully. So, Samantha Oliver says, "Good afternoon, Lady C. Love to you and your fur babies. My husband and I would love to hear your thoughts on the King, including a photo in the official coronation program of the dastardly duo. We are perplexed as to what the King is thinking and who is advising him. It's almost as if the worse their behaviour gets, the more he rewards them. We can't be the only people to be annoyed by this. His disregard for the loyal royals is staggering, and their feelings seem unimportant to the King. The cut-back coronation and the slimmed-down monarchy are, in our opinion, going to damage the royals long term. What is your understanding regarding the King's continuing blind loyalty to the Harkles?" Well, I think the very first question was something that we can refresh ourselves with, that Charles to an extent identifies with Harry, because Charles knows what it's like to be taken on a bumpy ride with a wife who is extremely demanding and disturbed. He suffered. I think he most likely projects rather too much of his suffering onto Harry, but I also think he's afraid of the consequences of that relationship coming to an end, because there has been a fear, as I mentioned in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story. There has been the fear amongst those who know Harry well and love Harry, that if the relationship comes to an end, Harry can do something precipitate and permanent, which would be tragic. So I think they have that fear based on Harry's extreme vulnerability and instability, really. But loyalty, in fact, I think people misread the situation. Charles and William have done things in such a way, Charles especially, that the press keep on speaking about olive branches. But really, what Charles has said is, and I'm paraphrasing now, his actions and I'm converting them into words. What he said is, you are my son. I am going to honor that relationship by asking you to my coronation, because I know that if I cut you loose entirely, you might do something irrevocable that would be on my conscience for the rest of my life, and I cannot live with that. I think that's a valid sentiment for any human being to have. Also, it is nobler to ask Harry and Meghan, and we've got an almost ideal outcome, which is she's not coming. He's coming, yes, but she's not coming. That damages their brand. That damages Harry and Meghan's position worldwide in terms of kudos, in terms of prestige. Why isn't she coming? Because the king has not been interacting with them. You know, if you have a dog, you don't stand out at your gate and bark. You let the dog do the barking. And Charles has sicked the guard dogs to do the negotiations, which have resulted in Meghan not getting what she wants and not coming. Harry is coming. Effectively, tail between the legs. Is that victory for Harry and Meghan, or is that a victory for Charles? I think the public keeps on misunderstanding that royalty and decent people, if you, let me rephrase that, if you go about things in a noble fashion, and I'm using the word in all its meanings, you do it in an elegant, you do it in a respectful, you do it in a gracious way, but you take the high road. You do not lower yourself by taking the low road. You're not vengeful. You're not punitive. But you are firm. You say, these are the boundaries and they cannot be crossed over. And this is what's happening. I have said time and again, and I get that people are frustrated and that they want immediate solutions to problems, to which there are no immediate solutions. Softly, softly, catchy monkey. And that's the game the royals have been playing all along. And this is not the first time they've had to play this game. They had to play it with the Windsors. They had to play it with Diana. They're having to play it with Meghan and Harry. So I hope that answers the question. Marsha Bentley says, "Dear Lady C, rumor from Los Angeles is that Meghan has invited the Democrat governor of California to her son's birthday party. There is a state senator, Diane Feinstein, who is being pushed to retire because of sickness. So he can, and he supposedly can, make the replacement appointment. Have you heard anything about this? Love, my T and Lady C." Thank you. Oh, yes, I have. Gavin Newsom was effectively bankrolled by Gordon and Ann Getty. That's right. The same Gordon Getty that Meghan was having lunch with. Oh, Gordon, I'm just so disadvantaged. Oh, Gordon, please. I'm just so unprotected. I mean, H has just made me a target for all sorts of crazy people. And Gordon, aside from not a very expensive house, maybe 40 million, I'd really just love to be president. But being a modest girl, I'm going to start out simple. So do you think maybe you could work the magic that you worked on getting Gavin Newsom into the governorship? And do you think you could maybe get me a political position? Anything modest. I mean, I don't mind starting as a senator. That's evidently the script that several of the people who deplore Meghan, and I now include members of the Getty family in that number, have been sort of playing behind the scenes, that Meghan has been hoping, Meghan, I'll finish the thought, that Meghan has been hoping. How true this is. I mean, we need for legal reasons to say that this could just be fanciful thoughts on the part of people who fear poor Gordon being separated from an awful lot of money. That, well, if it doesn't happen, they're going to be very grateful that it doesn't happen, but they are worried that Meghan could have been trying to get Gordon Getty's backing. So would it be surprising if she is in touch with Gavin Newsom? Not at all. Would it be surprising if she is parachuted into Diane Feinstein's seat? Well, one of my closest friends is one of Diane Feinstein's closest friends. And this friend of mine does not think that Meghan is regarded as a suitable fit or a suitable replacement. Not a suitable fit for winning a Democratic seat in an election, and not a suitable replacement for a politician that has been respected by many people over the years, even if reviled by others. So I hope that answers the question. And we're going to end on a glamorous note. Claudia says, "Dear Lady C, can you talk about who you think were the most stylish women of the 20th century? The Duchess of Windsor would be on that list, but do you know of others? Also, I'd love to read a book on this subject. Thank you." Well, there are many books on the subject. I can't even remember the names of them now, but there are books on the Graces, the Glamours, the Swans. If you Google glamorous women of the 20th century in books, I'm sure you'll come up with several. Now, in my opinion, the most stylish women of the 20th century were, and I'm going to start with Gloria Guinness. Gloria Guinness was ravishingly beautiful. She died quite young. I think she was in her 60s. She was from a very good Mexican family and used to say she was the daughter of a cook. Well, she wasn't. She was from a very grand Mexican family. She became the Countess von Furstenberg and then Mrs. Lowell Guinness. She was very beautiful, very stylish. I met her in New York in 1968 or 9. I can't remember which it was now. I can still see her walking up, I think it would have been 3rd Avenue actually, in a sombrero and gaucho pants and the whatever the top's called, I can't remember now. Very chic, very stylish. She was absolutely beautiful. Then, of course, there was the Duchess of Windsor. There was Aline, Countess of Romanones. She was American, married to a Spanish aristocrat. There was Babe Paley, Bill Paley's wife. She was so exquisitely elegant and glamorous and beautiful and just pristine. She squeaked. She was so pristine. There was, of course, Jackie Kennedy and her sister Lee Radziwill, both of whom were extremely stylish. Lee more self-consciously than Jackie, but both very stylish. There was Gloria Vanderbilt, very stylish. Jean Tierney, the actress. Greta Garbo, stylish even when she couldn't be bothered. Louise Brooks, that's really going to the beginning of the century. Margaret, Duchess of Argyll, beautiful, stylish, always exquisite. Queen Elizabeth II, stylish in a different way. Eye-catching deliberately, but not glamorous to the point of being sexy. She always stopped short of being sexy. Diana, Princess of Wales, in her various reincarnations, not at the very beginning, but there, once she got encouragement from Anna Harvey, and then she ended up thereafter developing her own style. She was very stylish towards the end of her life. There was Zsa Zsa Gabor, who again was really stylish, glamorous, beautiful woman. Great fun, very entertaining, over-the-top stylish, but stylish. There was Princess Marina and her sister, Princess Paul of Yugoslavia. She was very stylish too, but Princess Marina had a greater platform and greater longevity, and she was beautifully stylish. There's Princess Alexandra, her daughter, who has always been beautiful, glamorous, stylish in the way that conventional princesses who are beauties are. The Duchess of Kent, the present Duchess of Kent, very stylish, beautiful woman too, but impeccable. Dare I say, Princess Michael of Kent. I know she's not my favorite person, but she is stylish. Sometimes, rather like Zsa Zsa Gabor, the taste is a little bit dodgy, but the style is always there. And you asked stylish, so I'm giving you stylish. There was Princess de Retty, who was Liliane de Retty. She was the second wife of King Leopold III of the Belgians. Ravishingly beautiful woman, stylish to the nth degree. There was Queen Marie of Romania in the first half of the 20th century. Beautiful woman, very stylish, almost eccentrically stylish, but stylish. There was Princess Irina of Russia, who was married to Prince Felix Yusupov, who was one of the men who dispatched Rasputin. She was the Tsar's niece, Grand Duchess Xenia's only daughter. Beautiful woman, very stylish. She actually became a dress designer with her husband when they were in exile in Paris. There was a wonderful movie star called Maria Felix. She was Mexican. She had one of the great collections of jewelry in the world. She was very stylish as well. There was Marjorie Merriweather Post, exquisite in every way. Mar-a-Lago was her house. Everything she did was exquisite in the most superb taste, with the most tremendous style. The two things don't always go together, incidentally. There was Dolores Del Rio, another movie star, another ravishing beauty, very stylish. You notice I haven't mentioned Elizabeth Taylor, because I thought she was glamorous but not stylish. Ava Gardner, beautiful and not so sure about stylish. And I'm going to end with somebody that none of you has heard of, but who's a friend of mine. She is the most beautifully dressed woman I have ever known, and I ran across, if didn't know all of these women, I ran across a lot of them in the course of my life. Her name is Iris Bond. She is the Fayed's executive assistant or something along those lines. Anyway, she is a super duper high-powered person with the Fayed organization. She is the most beautifully dressed woman I have ever seen. Exquisite. Everything she has ever worn is in the most supreme good taste. She is quiet style at its best. And on that note, I will say, I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have, please remember to keep the questions and comments coming in, because I need your input for us to have a conversation. And thank you very much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed it. God bless. And if you have enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care.